Did you know that 50% of marriages end in divorce? Did you know that divorce is actually satanic? Did you know that Jesus actually said from the beginning it was not so when he was debating with the Pharisees about whether or not they could divorce their wives? For what reasons was it lawful to divorce their wives? And with that idea, with this concept of the fact of barring extreme scenarios of like infidelity, the fact that divorce is something that is satanic, would it also be fair to say, considering that, did you know the number one reason people get divorced is financial issues? Financial disagreements. So would it be fair to submit the claim that one of the main avenues Satan uses to divorce God's people, to just get divorces in general, is actually through a miscommunication and finances, through blinding God's people about finances? What I'm going to go through today, what I'm about to break down on this whiteboard here in just a second, I'm going to go through about 3 or 4 different things or key aspects of Satan's financial plan for you and I. Satan's financial plan for the church, Satan's financial plan for believers to keep them broke, unhappy, and hopefully in terrible marriages, preferably even ending a marriage. Let's hop into it. You know, as I was going to list these out over here, the first one that I was actually going to put, I'll just be completely honest, I was actually going to put laziness, but it's actually not laziness. It's really like almost a derealization that has happened to most Christian people. And it's the fact that most of them have never sat down and figured out what they actually want and then how much that lifestyle is actually going to cost, right? So I'm not even going to put laziness for number one. A better thing to put would really be like a, that's written really small, but like a lack of awareness. So I want to break this down. Do this exercise with me. I think we all know everything's getting expensive. That's not a news flash to anybody, but I want you to just think about this for a moment as a man, as a Christian. Let's break this down. You can be a woman watching this too. That's fine. Even if you're single right now, this is something you should still have mentally in your head. Let's play a game. Follow along. You ready? How many kids do you want? Let's just say hypothetically, you know, you're Christian. Christian people tend to want to have more kids. Let's just say you want to have 4 kids. Okay. Well, in order to have 4 kids, we're going to just look at the basics of this too. In order to have 4 kids, and do you want each of them to have their own bedroom? Probably ideally yes, right? So we need a 5-bedroom house, okay? 5-bedroom house. I'm going to be very generous on this because typically a 5-bedroom house is more than this, but your mortgage would probably be somewhere around $3,000 a month. Now also, if you have 4 kids, that's a family of 6. Now you're going to want clothes and stuff like that too. You want to be able to take care of them. Anything that they're in need, you're going to want them to have it. Let's just be conservative here. Let's say $1,000 a month, okay? Now, in order to feed a family of 6, if you've been to the grocery store recently, you already know, like, it can be kind of expensive already. Family of 6, conservatively, especially if you're someone who wants to eat healthy, you want your kids to eat healthy, you go to the gym, you're on like a bodybuilder's diet, your wife is also into fitness and stuff. I think conservatively for a family of 6, you're probably looking at every bit of $2,000 a month in food, something like that, $2,000 a month in food. Now, I'm not going to insinuate that you want a supercar or something like that, but let's just say you and your woman both probably want nicer vehicles, like even just a normal truck nowadays. Like a truck is pretty much like it's not a luxury vehicle, but there's no such thing as an inexpensive truck anymore. So realistically, for just a good solid car, you're looking somewhere between like $1,000 to $1,100 a month. So we'll be conservative. We'll say $800 a month each because you both want a pretty nice car, right? So we'll go ahead and write that in here. Together, that's $1,600 a month for both of those. I could factor in things like insurance and stuff, but that's going to vary so much based off of like where you live that I'm not even going to try and put that in here because it could just vary way too much. But another thing that's probably important to put in here is like, hey man, if you have a beautiful woman, a woman who likes to take care of herself, nails, hair, all of that type of stuff, and she's doing that every 2 weeks or so, every bit, let's just say self-care. But hold on, even more than that, let's think your haircuts. Let's think about all the stuff that your kids are going to need. Let's think the fact that if you're a health guy, right, you like taking care of yourself, which I know most of the people that are on Christ Focused Self-Improvement, you obviously do. Think supplements, think the powders that you want to take, like just all that type of stuff, miscellaneous stuff. Just for her hair and nails, it's probably $350, something like that. So I'm going to be conservative and say 600. Let's factor in some other things. Obviously, we could put things in here like emergency fund, right? Which I'm sure you probably want to have something like that. We can be, once again, pretty conservative with this. We'll say a couple $100. Now, I imagine you want to go on vacations and stuff. Now, obviously, there are some vacations that you can do that maybe you drive like a couple hours and it's not that bad. But honestly, for a family of 6, it's probably not a bad idea to probably save what, maybe $1,000 a month, something like that. Let's say $500 a month. What about when you have to go to events, like when you have to go to weddings and stuff like that? What about nights out? What about going on date nights? What about taking the kids out to do fun things? What about paying for the sports that they want to go to? No joke, like that's another thing that I don't think I really understood when I was a kid, like how expensive me and my siblings being in sports actually was. Like it's pretty expensive. I don't think it's that crazy between that and entertainment and everything else. Eating out, you want to hang out with friends. Maybe some of your friends as you start to get older have weddings and stuff. And so you kind of like have to bring gifts and stuff. I really don't think it's that crazy to say like $600 a month, something like that, $500 a month. Let's say $500 a month. I'll just put miscellaneous for this. Now I imagine you also want to start saving as well. You want to be able to actually start putting stuff away for retirement. You want to be able to invest, all of that. I'd say minimum probably what, at least $1,000 a month. Most people want to do more than that, but we'll say 1,000. I'm starting to run out of space, but I'm also just trying to think about everything that you probably want. If you're really into health, obviously you're gonna have things like gym memberships. There's gonna be things like RO water machines that you're gonna want to buy. Like if you're into that health stuff, especially if you care about your own health, but obviously you love your wife, you love your kids, you want them to be as healthy as possible as well, right? Maybe you're so far into it that you like to do blood checks and stuff like that. Maybe you like cold plunges, maybe you like saunas, anything like this. That's a couple more $100 a month. I'll just write health for this. Tithing at church, let's say $400 a month. That's $100 a week. And I'm running out of space, but we could also talk about giving. I know you want to give, or you want to be blessed so you can be a blessing to other people, right? This can vary a lot, but maybe it's a family member, maybe you have a sibling or something like that, like desperately needs money. So just to be conservative, let's just say it would be like, say, $3,000 a year that you're given. So that's $250 a month. And mind you, this is a very low end side of this, right? If you're someone who, say, wants to send your kids to private school, that's minimum $1,000 a month. So that could affect this a lot. Like this could be an extra $4,000. If you want your house to be nicer, depending on where you live, this could be a lot more than $3,000 a month, right? Like in order to have a place like that in certain, like, you know, closer to cities, certain parts of the country, all of that, you could be much closer to like $4,000 a month for that. All of these could vary a lot. Like this is a pretty conservative estimate if I'm being 100% honest with you. Like I said, this is a very conservative estimate, and when you calculate all this up, this is $11,250. But mind you, this isn't what you have to make. This is what you need to make after taxes. And roughly, you know, just keep this kind of simple. You need to make about 1.5x this number. So 11,250 times 1.5 equals 16,875. And so if you and your wife obviously are both going to be working and all that, that's not that crazy. That's about 8 something grand a month, but that is close to 6 figures. So that does mean both of you need to be making about 6 figures, or you guys need to come out to that number. But obviously, if you're in my type of situation where you want your wife eventually to be able to stay home with the kids, and you know, like that's one of her passions, your woman wants to stay and raise the kids, well then that means that's 16 grand, 17 grand a month pre-taxes that you need to be making. By the way, this isn't factoring in utilities, this isn't factoring in gas, this isn't factoring in water, electric, Netflix, Hulu subscriptions, sports, going to sporting events, the random vacations and bachelor parties that you go to with your friends, the random events that you want to chime into, the communities you want to buy into, all your hobbies, but whatever that looks like, right? Maybe even if it's just something like smoking cigars, you start adding all this stuff up. I mean, that's probably a couple extra grand a month. I'm not saying this to try and discourage you, but like, if we're being completely honest, this very, very easily could be 25 grand a month required, easily. It's not that crazy to get to that point. And so this is the first thing I'd recommend you do. Take some time, go through this stuff, maybe even use ChatGPT for it so you can get a better idea of like, you know, what the prices would be in your area and all that. This isn't factoring in gas, etc. Insurance, I think I said that. And man, it is hot out here. Dive into it. Figure out what your numbers are. Figure out how much you would want to make. Figure out exactly what your dream life is. Sit down with your partner if you've never done this before. Sit down with your wife. Sit down with your girl. Sit down with your boy. Whoever it is. Sit down. Talk to them about this stuff. Walk through it. See what your guys' number is. I don't think it's going to be that uncommon for you guys to like go through everything and you're like, you look back at it, you calculate it all up, and you're like, man, it would be 20 grand a month that we would need in order to have the lifestyle, right? So let's just say it was, right? Because like I said, this just regular conservative stuff is 16,875. So that's an extra couple grand. That's really not that crazy. You factor in a couple other little things here and you're there at 20 grand a month in order to do all of this. And obviously if you have 20 grand and you multiply it by 1.5, you got to hit $30,000 a month, which means both of you need to combine, right? If you were splitting it or like both trying to make half of it for some reason, let's just look at it that way. That means 15 grand a month for each of you, or you guys totaling 15 grand a month. And obviously if you're a guy and you're like, man, I want my woman to stay at home, but that's the lifestyle you want to reach. Granted, you can just make some sacrifices, right? Maybe you don't have 4 kids. Maybe you don't have the fancy cars, right? There's definitely ways around this stuff. But if you did want to reach that level and you're like, man, this is a non-negotiable, like I need to like get to this level, and you want your wife to be able to stay at home, man, that's 30 grand a month that you need to make, which by the way, just multiply that by 12. I wish I could show this on screen. That's 360 grand a year that you need to make. And I'm telling you, if you get this number, for some of you, it might be a lot higher than that. You might realize, man, I got to make $500,000 a year. When you get this frame of mind, you'll really start to wonder, why in the heck am I playing video games? Why am I sitting around with my friends just doing absolutely nothing? Why am I sitting around drinking? Why have I not put the down yet? Why am I sitting around watching sports? Why am I playing fantasy football when I'm not even anywhere close to this? Even more so, I think the thing that a lot of you are going to realize is, crap, you're going to get that number and you guys are going to realize, or you're going to realize, I can't get this with the degree that I've like bought into. A lot of you might have a number that's so high, you're going to realize, I have to start a business, I have to get into sales, or I have to drop my expectations on what I want out of life. By the way, none of those are wrong answers. It's just like, what do you want to do? But most people aren't actually aware of how much it costs to actually have the lifestyle that they want. I mean, bro, for some of you, I know like sports cars would be like a super dope thing. Like you want proper nice cars, you want to be on a ranch that has maybe 5-6 bedrooms, you want a pool at the back, it's on land, like all this stuff, right? Oh, we didn't even factor in pets, right? If you want cattle, if you want livestock, if you want dogs, start factoring all that. And on top of that, let's say if you're in business too, like the way I am, I'm in business. And by the way, I'm no expert in business, by the way. I mean, I will make over 100 grand this year, which I actually think might be an even better thing for this to come from me, because I could probably relate to you a lot more if you're just getting into business, or if you're not, like, I don't know, for me personally, it never quite hit as much when it's a guy who's already making like $30 million a year. It's like, bro, you can't even really relate to me anymore. But let's also just factor this in. On top of that, if say your number is 25 grand a month, then you have business expenses on top of that. And let's say you have 10 grand a month in business expenses, bro, that's 35 grand. More than that, actually. So number one, lack of awareness. And I think once you gain awareness into what you actually want and what it'll actually cost, then you'll realize the price that you have to pay in order to get it. And you'll stop messing around. You'll stop joking around. Stop acting like you have a bunch of time. You'll stop scrolling. You'll stop watching pornography. You'll stop going to weed, playing video games and stuff, because you realize, like, man, I need to get my stuff in order. You know, John 10:10 lays out what the enemy actually wants to do in your life and every believer's life. It says the thief only comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And it's Jesus talking. And he says, but I have come to give you life and life more abundantly. The word abundance, the word prosperity, the word rich, these are all Bible words. I know some people get mad at that. I don't really care. If you think that God hates money, I'm not the page for you. Just gonna be honest, you're wrong. But like, I'm not even gonna get into that. Satan's goal, one of his main methods, is actually to distract people so that he can steal, kill, and destroy things from them, right? And you know, this is kind of a side tangent, like a little bit of a side point, but I do find it interesting. One of the things I've always wondered about is, like, the Christian faith is so strong in Africa, yet they face the most persecution, and just in general, it's a very poor place. One of the things I realized is because the enemy is at work there in a major way. Think about that verse, right? The enemy only comes to, or the thief only comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. Well, if I were to ask you, why is Africa poor? Why does it feel like it's just so messed up over there? One of the first things that would probably come to mind to you is colonialism, right? Colonialism. I'd be like, yeah, man, that makes sense. Why? Because they went in there and they stole all the resources. Oh, okay, so colonialism, they stole. Okay. Yeah. I'd say, what else? And you say, there's all of these wars and civil wars and terrorist groups and the persecution from the Islamist jihadists over there and all this different type of stuff. They're killing people. Oh, they're killing people, yeah. And what else is going on? Well, man, like, just through these wars and through all these battles and stuff like that, entire villages get destroyed and famine happens and it destroys entire, like, pieces of countries. It's awful. And I'd be like, yeah, I agree. They're what? Destroying. Huh. Steal, kill, destroy. Some of the main things you would talk about with Africa are all Satan's battle plan, all Satan's desire. Satan, the thief, only comes around to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And if you are not careful, you're not conscious, even if you don't live in Africa. I know I have actually some African followers and stuff that are in Zimbabwe and Nigeria and all that stuff, so shout out y'all. I know sometimes I've actually talked about this on Instagram before, and they'll like DM me, they'll be like, hey man, it's also like corruption and stuff too. That ties right back in with all of this too. Corruption ties in with these completely. But it's the same thing in these other places too. It's the same thing here in America. One of the things we as Americans struggle with, or just first world countries, we're in an era of distraction. And if you aren't conscious about what you put your mind on, Satan will literally distract you and then steal the promises God has for you, kill the dreams God has put in you, and destroy your future if you are not careful. Number two, and I'm going to make another statement that once again is going to be very controversial for some people. Sin makes you poor. Read the book of Proverbs. The fool is who? He's the man who goes and does the sinful stuff. And then what's the flip side of it? The righteous man, right? Can I just make a claim that's it's going to sound mean, but it's 100% honest. Barring any, like, you know, rare situation, you know, maybe a guy was doing great, but his business went under. The guy who's just getting out of college because, you know, he's getting his doctorate. Situations like that, yes, there are exceptions to the rule that I'm about to say. But in general, every single person, especially man that I've met in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond, who is still broke, it's because they have a sinful lifestyle. And I don't mean they struggle with sin. I mean they live in sin. They love to drink. They love to smoke. They love to party. They love to go to clubs. They love to gamble. They love to sports bet. These people live in sin, which is why they can't get ahead. They're ruled by their lust. That's another piece to this. Every single person I know who's past 27, 28, if they're still poor, this is always the reason why. One of the contributing factors, at least, to why. Sin makes you poor. Rare scenarios with lust, you got guys out here buying OnlyFans. You got guys out here buying I have guys in the King's Hall in the community that we run on, like, how you can actually quit pornography for good, how you can conquer lust for good as a Christian man. In that community, I'm telling you, there's guys that I work with currently, or have worked with, who have since conquered it, who were literally spending like borderline entire paycheck, on OnlyFans and prostitutes. That really happens. I don't even care if that's a controversial statement. Sin makes you poor. And I don't mean struggling with sin. We're all sinful. We all fall short. We all sin sometimes. We all need grace and repentance. We are all saved by the grace of God through faith in Jesus Christ, not by your own works or doing, lest no man should boast. But living in sin will make you poor. Number 3, 1 Corinthians 15:33, which says, bad company corrupts good morals. Now, I want to stipulate this too. When I was referring to everything that's on this side, I was not telling you how to live your life. You live your life however you want, man. You have the goals you want. I'm not telling you what to do. What I will say though, with this key verse, yes, we could talk about sin. You could talk about the fact that you are some of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You already know that stuff, and if you were actually going to listen to that advice, you either already have or you're never going to. But you know what bad company will also actually have you doing? It'll have you living above your means. It'll have you living for image, not progress. It'll have you living to look like you're financially free rather than getting you actually financially free. This is why people who just start to make a bit of money, they immediately leave and move into a crib that they can barely afford. They start making some money, they immediately cop a car that has $1,000 a month payment. I'm not even dissing them specifically, like I'm not gonna name them, but I know people living in like a double wide who will buy brand new Mercedes and stuff like that. They'll buy cars that have a $1,100 a month payment. A depreciating asset, they'll spend that much money on it. Why? So that they look cool, so that other people will think something about them. Real rich people, real wealthy people, the type of people you actually want to respect from, your spiritual elders who are wise and have godly wisdom and know how to become financially free and know what the Bible says about stewarding money, they're not impressed when you overextend yourself on your own lifestyle. Nobody's impressed by that. The only people who are impressed by that are the people that you don't care about impressing. My car has a tiny monthly payment. My girl's car has a tiny monthly payment. We will not upgrade cars until there's minimum like 200 grand in the bank. This is the beauty about, even though like I sell online and like, you know, we have King's Hall, but you know, like whenever I get like hate comments and stuff like that, people will be like, you sell a course? I don't need to flex a car or something like that or a watch in order to get you to buy it. My philosophy is I'll just teach and provide so much value that anybody who wants to join will join. Anyone who feels like it's on their heart to join will join. I'd rather be well off and others think I'm not well off than to look like I'm well off and secretly I'm actually not. And while we're here, we can throw in number 4, which is real quick because I've kind of already mentioned it, but it's Proverbs 22:7, which says that the borrower is slave to the lender. There's good debt. I'm not going into all that. This video would double in length if I did that. But it's exactly what I'm talking about. Why on earth are you getting $1,000 a month payment on a car while you're young? That verse deeply ties in with 1 Corinthians 15:33, but they're both good to mention. So number 4, Proverbs 22:7. Number 5, I heard this quote one time. I put rich versus poor, but there's this quote that says, the rich get richer because the poor think every opportunity is a scam. Mwah. Now, don't get me wrong. There genuinely are scams out there. If you're going out and buying how to make 10 grand a month in the next 90-day programs, you're probably going to get scammed. But yes, like investments, there's a whole different realm we could go into with that. But this can show up even in ways of like being hesitant to invest in yourself, skincare products, supplements, coaching, communities, or even just time investments of joining a church, joining that youth group, joining those Bible studies. They have such a negative perception on anything. Of course, this is not all poor people, of course. We're generalizing here for the sake of a YouTube video. But in general, in my experience, the fact that the optimists get rewarded is probably pretty biblical too. And number 6, your lust. If you can't conquer lust, you basically guarantee, it's almost a lock that you will not reach the level of wealth you could have. Because yes, things like if you're like really there, you know, buying fans, buying stuff like that, but also wasting energy, right? The time you just physically waste actually doing it, whatever you're watching, whatever you're consuming, how much it messes up your relationship with God, how much it messes up your productivity, how much it messes up your ambition. You feel less masculine, all of that. But even deeper, you know, we started this video by talking about the fact that the divorce rate was 50%, meaning 50% of people get divorced, 50% of people don't. And so if 50% of people get divorced, which side do you think the people who can't control their lust end up on? Which side of the 50% of divorce do you think men who continue to watch pornography into marriage end up on? Strongest man in the Bible, Samson. Wisest man in the Bible, Solomon. David, the man after God's own heart, all fell to what? All got destroyed by what? Lust. The Bible warns you about it over and over and over again. And if you really want to see something that'll mess up your wealth, try divorce. Try having a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 home and you lose it in the divorce. Guess which men are more likely to cheat? The men who watch pornography. And I know every time I say that, people go, yeah, but I would never cheat on somebody. Oh, if I was married, I would never cheat. Yeah, except you're already in a relationship right now with God and you cheat on him already. If you're willing to do it to him, you'll do it to them. Men of God who can't fix their lust, who can't stop falling into it, who don't conquer it, they are not the men that end up with the godly women. They're not the men that end up with the godly family and the kids and the dream life and everything that they wanted to achieve. Or even if they do get it, guess what? They can't keep it. Because why? They can't control their lust. If that is something you're serious about getting out of, if you're thinking about the fact that you want to build more wealth, you want to make more money, down in the description below, I will leave a link to King's Hall. Go check it out. Be blessed, and I'll see you in the next video.